One last time, welcome back again. That's Jerry O'Brien, and I'm Christopher Harrison. And this is, of course, Xamarin for Absolute Beginners. And so you may have figured out that our real goal here is just take a look, an overview of Xamarin. And before we go anywhere else on closing everything out, I do want to mention really quickly that there is an edX course that you can check out on Xamarin Forms. So that way, if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can do that. And there's a Petzold book. Like 1,200 pages that will tell you everything that you might have ever wanted to know about Xamarin Forms, but we're afraid to ask. So if you're looking for more information, definitely check those out. In the meantime, though, we want to close out our little course by taking a look at how to take the app that you've created and put it onto an actual device, because emulators are great, but it's always best to check it out with other devices, especially if you're going to be doing things like sharing and so forth. So the way that we're going to get that onto a device is by taking advantage of a little thing known as sideloading. And sideloading is, in a nutshell, is basically going to allow me to put an app onto a phone, onto a device, without having to go through the store. Now, the catch is with sideloading that it has to be enabled. Now, getting that enabled is going to vary depending on whether you're using Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. And of course, all of that could change at any moment. But if you check out the developer sites on any one of those three, they'll walk you through the process of how to enable sideloading. Once you have it enabled, Jerry, how do you actually get it onto there?
We'll deploy it.
OK.
So
let's see it in action.
Let's see it in action. All right.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to do it, obviously, is to connect your device to your computer. Now, here's where we need to be careful about understanding how we're going to deploy to which specific device. If we're on our Windows PC, which is what this one here is, and we're going to deploy to either an Android device or a Windows Phone device, then we can simply plug it in with the USB cable to our computer, and then we can deploy directly from that. So I've got the Windows Phone up here right now. And we could easily do this on the Android device also, but we're going to show the Windows Phone because I can actually project the screen so you can see it on the computer. So let's flip back to our computer briefly here for a second. And what we're going to do is show you that I have set the Windows Phone project as the startup project. And you'll notice that from the drop down, we have the Hello Xamarin WinPhone project ready to start. And rather than have the emulator selected here, we have device. So it will recognize and know that we have a device plugged in. And all I need to simply do is click on my little green play button for Start with Debugging. And you'll see that we're deploying the application. We get our little status bar down here. We now have an orange bar that basically says, hey, your application is ready. And if we switch over to the Project My Screen app, we do indeed see that we have the application deployed on the Windows Phone.
And that's actually on your phone.
And that's actually on my phone, right? So this is, I'm able to use my phone back and forth. If we scoot over here, we can see at the top, hey, there's my Hello Xamarin WinPhone application. And so we have indeed deployed it to that device.
Neat.
Now, with the Android application, it's pretty much the same concept. So we wouldn't need to worry too much about, anything different. So I'm not going to demonstrate that right now.
Okay.
But instead, what I do want to show is that there is a definite difference when you decide to deploy to an iPhone device. And as Christopher mentioned, you really need to go to the different developer sites for these devices to figure out how to either enable developer mode or how to be able to deploy applications to your device. What I'm going to demonstrate for you is actually a failure, and it's going to be done on purpose. And the reason I don't want to do this to fail it purposely on iPhone is just to let you know that it's a little more complicated. There's a little more complexity behind deploying to the iPhone device. First thing that you need to be aware of is in order to deploy to a physical iPhone device, you need to have it plugged into the Mac that the Xamarin Mac agent is running on. So you can't plug your iPhone into your PC. Even with iTunes installed on a PC, you can't plug it into the PC and expect to deploy it. Again, remember, Apple's licensing requires the build process of the code to happen on the PC. So I have my iPhone plugged into my Mac over here, and I have the application ready to run and ready to deploy from my PC. So let's switch to the PC briefly. And what I'm going to do is from the drop down, I will select hello Xamarin.ios. And you'll notice that immediately it recognizes that my iPhone is plugged in. So, there's a lot of great intelligence built into these packages. And so let me go ahead and click on the Start with Debugging. And you'll notice that, well, it came back pretty quick. And so I kind of pre-staged this because it does take a while to do the build process. It does take a while for it to run through and physically fail. And you'll notice that down here in my output window, it said launch failed. The app could not be launched on Jerry's iPhone. Please check the logs for more details. So if you're a new developer to this, you're kind of going, oh, great. How do I check the logs? Where the heck do I find those? If you go to the Help menu on Visual Studio, find the little Xamarin entry and select Open Logs. It will open up the log folder and highlight the latest log. And if we double-click and open that log that was generated, and I'm not going to read all of it, and I apologize for that really fast scrolling, but basically if we come down to the bottom, we will run into a situation and which I'm not seeing. So what should have been pre-staged was a failure on the code signing. But again, everything in here. Couldn't parse iOS Simulator Apple TV. I may have chosen the wrong build or something. Again, it's really failed. So, but just as an example to show you, how it didn't work specifically. What I was intending to show you basically was, if we switch over to my Mac real briefly, in order to deploy an application onto an iPhone, you need to have an Apple developer account. You need to have the necessary certificates for development. So if we take a look, I'm actually on the developer.apple.com site here. You need to have an appropriate signing certificate for your application. You need to have the necessary app ID created, which I don't have a Hello Xamarin app created in here. That's part of the reason why it wouldn't deploy as well. And then you need to have the appropriate provisioning profile, and that needs to be downloaded and installed on the iPhone. So we didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time teaching you how to deploy apps on an iPhone because that's a really involved process. What we wanted to show you was that you can deploy to the iPhone, but if you're not familiar with it, it's not as simple as deploying to the Windows Phone or to the Android phone. There's a lot involved in that. The Xamarin documentation helps walk you through that whole provisioning process, and to make sure that you've got that straight. The Apple developer site, of course, has all that information on there as well. So if you're an Apple developer, you probably already have your certificates, and you know how to create those provisioning profiles. So, again, without stepping through all of that, that is an example of deploying to a physical device.
Okay. All right. So it looks like if something does go wrong, we can get a lot of information on how to start debugging that. Fantastic. All right. So hopefully by the end of all of this, you've seen how to get started with Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to continue to dig deeper, which hopefully you do, check out the edX course that's available, and definitely check out the book as well. With that, want to thank everybody for tuning in. That is Jerry. I'm Christopher, and we'll see you on another MVA.